So hi everybody, and today's topic is privacy management. So before we start the session, I want to highlight that Priva privacy risk management solution and subject rights request is not yet available in government community cloud. It will be available to our government customers later in this year. For today's session, we will show you privacy management capabilities that are currently available for our commercial customers. So first of all, let's understand what is data privacy. Data privacy or information privacy often refers to a specific kind of privacy that is linked to users' personal information. In United States, we don't yet have a central federal level privacy law like the European Union's GDPR, but there are several vertically focused federal privacy laws like HIPAA, then there's FERPA, COPPA, and GLBA, and some states may have their own set of data privacy laws. Within the past few years, around 29 states in the US, including California, Texas, and New York, have drafted data privacy laws, and some of them also apply to government agencies. Government agencies may have to collect a wide range of personally identifiable information or PII from their citizens on a regular basis. Like example, they may collect payment information or social security details, healthcare data, and much more. And with all of this sensitive data in their possession, government agencies could become prime targets for cyber attacks. So just like private companies, government agencies are also required to be compliant with applicable data privacy laws and regulations. Otherwise, they may have to face major consequences like fines and litigation cases and so on. Data privacy laws also give people rights to access, change, and control the data that governments or organizations collect about them. And this is usually referred to as data subject request. And government agencies may also have to respond quickly to these data subject requests. At Microsoft, we are serious about our commitment to protect our customers when you are using Microsoft products. We also encourage our customers to build trusted businesses and services, and we want to help you all in this journey. We believe that privacy is a human right, and organizations that make privacy central to their business operations will earn the trust of their customers and be successful in the long run. Now, for organizations that are working on implementing these privacy requirements, they're facing some key challenges. Privacy and data subject request management is still a very manual process, and most organizations have not fully automated this yet. And because of the manual processes, our state and local government customers may have to bear increased costs of data subject requests. To provide privacy awareness among end users, organizations may have to conduct annual privacy trainings. But most employees forget the training and then they don't apply their learning while they are handling personal information because the trainings are not contextual in nature. Now, why is this privacy management so manual? It has been observed that most organizations are still using spreadsheets, emails, and in-person conversations to understand the current data map in their organization and how the personal data is flowing from one region to the other. Some organizations may be using privacy management solutions, but most of these solutions provide privacy management through a questionnaire, which is then sent to the internal departments or agencies to ask them what kind of personal data they are collecting. Then these different departments will fill the questionnaire, and thus the organization creates a data map or data inventory. But this data map serves more like a record keeping, and it doesn't really provide any actionable insights. Now, since these softwares don't provide any automations, organizations cannot really do much to improve their privacy posture. Microsoft Priva can help overcome the challenges that we discussed. and it can help you streamline and automate privacy as well as subject rights request. Currently, Microsoft Priva solutions offer two products, at least in our commercial tenants. So we have privacy risk management solution, and then we have the subject rights request. So I will be talking today about the privacy risk management solution, and my colleague Leo will later talk about the Priva subject rights request solution. The Priva privacy risk management solution helps you identify the personal data within your organization, and it also helps you understand the privacy risks around that data. You can get additional insights on the personal data, like is the personal data overshared and overexposed to people within or outside the organization. We can see if the personal data is really old and hasn't been used in a while, and maybe it is no longer required for the organization. Then we can see if the personal data is being transferred within various departments of the organization, or maybe it's transferred outside the country, and so on. So this way you will be able to correlate that data to identify critical privacy risks. And once you identify the privacy risks, your admins can then create an automated policy to mitigate the risks. Your admins can control what happens to the personal data, or you can also empower your information workers to take certain actions. It's very important to involve the information workers because they are the ones that deal with personal data on a day-to-day basis. And once they have the correct context, they can take appropriate actions on the personal data and they can reduce the risks. So this helps you build a privacy resilient organization. So that being said, let's take a look at the demo for Priva privacy risk management. And we'll see how it helps organizations to visualize their personal data and also mitigate the privacy risks. So let me go to the Purview compliance portal. So here you can find Priva privacy risk management on the left-hand side navigation. Priva uses a role-based access control or RBAC permission model, and only users who are assigned a role can access Priva. And the actions allowed by each user are restricted by role type. So let's say I am currently logged in as a privacy administrator. So after you sign into Priva, you will be able to see this overview page. Here, your privacy administrators can see dynamic insights about how personal data is evolving in your Microsoft 365 environment. And this overview page should populate with initial insights within the first 24 hours of signing up with Priva. And as you continue to use Priva, this overview page will refresh and continue to provide current information. Here you can quickly spot privacy issues. You can identify and assess privacy risks, and you can also take actions to fix those issues. So here you can see new items with personal data that have been discovered in the last 7 days. So let's explore these items. You can see there are several filters over here that helps me further drill down into this personal data. So example, I can explore personal data in various locations like Exchange, SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive. I can also quickly see if there is any overshared personal data that has been shared with public or external users or with all the people within the organization. I can also explore specific types of personal data like credit card numbers or SSN numbers, and we provide more than 200 sensitive information types here to choose from. So for this demo, let's find out personal data that has organization-wide access. So here I can see the overshared files with personal data that are potentially at high risk. I can also see the contents of this file. So let's wait for the content to load. So yep, looks like it has some personal data here. I can see some credit card number and debit card number, etc. In the details tab, I can also see what kind of personal data type it contains. Now let's go back to the overview tab to get more actionable insights on the personal data. Priva automatically creates 3 risk management policies by default. Policy matches for the last 7 days are shown here, and the active alerts are generated for these policies. So you can see the alerts over here. You can also see the alert trends for last 7 days, 30 days, as well as 90 days. You can also see additional key actionable insights here, like content that contains most personal data, then policies with most matches last week, then users with most policy matches last week, and so on. Our customers who have deployed Priva have found this view to be extremely valuable, and most of them did not have this level of visibility and insights into their personal data risks. In fact, this overview has enabled administrators to start the conversation with their business units on how to set up for remediations. And some of our CISOs have found this as a great value add to show to their board as well. So once you have been using Priva for sufficient period, you can see the trends and how much personal data has been discovered over time in your Microsoft 365 environment. And where is that data located? Is it in Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive for Business, or Teams? You can also discover personal data transfer trends across different departments within the organization. You can also discover unused personal data across different locations. And you can see overexposed personal data trends across different locations as well. Now that the privacy admins have the key insights regarding personal data, they can start creating new privacy policies, or they can customize the existing default policies to start remediating the risks. So let's go here to the policies tab. There are 3 pre-created policies that Priva provides by default. There's this data minimization policy, which detects personal data that has been sitting idle or unused for a long period of time. And this helps you take decisions on whether you want to dispose this data. Then we have data transfers policy, which helps you detect the transfer of personal data across different departments or geographies. So for state and local government customers, if you want to prevent personal data transfer across different agencies, you can use this particular policy. Then there's also data overexposure policy, which detects personal data that has public access or external access. When policy matches are found, it will start generating the alerts. So initially, your privacy admin or privacy team can triage these alerts. So here you can see there are different alerts. Let's wait for it to load. So yeah, there's this one alert over here. Let me show you the details of this alert. And you can also see the content that matched this alert. You can see all the different personal data types that were detected in this content as well. So let's wait for the content to load here just to see how it looks like. Now, the administrator, if he wants to take an action on this content, they can create an issue here, and then they can start remediating this risk. So let me show you some of the risks that have or issues that have already been created. So here you can see there are different issues that were created by the privacy team. So let's click on one of this recently created issue. So here you can review the content for this alert in detail. You can clearly see there's a lot of personal data in this content. So I can see SSN numbers, and I can also see birth dates, date of birth, age, and other sensitive information. Under file activities, we can also see that this user has overshared this personal data with public, and anyone with this link can access this data, which can be potentially very risky. So as an administrator, I can now perform various remediation tasks. So I can notify the owner or the content owner that they have overshared this information. Or I, as an admin, can unshare this information to reduce the risk. Or I can retain or delete this content as per personal data retention schedule by applying retention labels. Or I can protect this personal data by applying sensitivity labels. I can also notify the content owner that I have applied this sensitivity label. So let's go back to the policies tab. So we saw how admins can manually remediate the risks, but it may not be a scalable approach. The true potential of Priva privacy risk management solution is to empower your end users or information workers to remediate the risks with the personal data. So for that, your admins can create new policies, or they can customize the existing policies to start delegating the risk management to your end users. So let's customize this data transfer policy and see how it looks like. So here I want to detect transfer of personal data from one agency to another agency. So here I can choose what type of personal data I want to monitor for the organization. So example, I can select classification groups here. So if I add the classification group, I can select different personal data types based on certain privacy regulations like HIPAA or GLBA. So let's select US HIPAA. You can see what personal data types are included in this HIPAA classification group. So example, it detects SSN numbers, medical terms, international classification of diseases, and DEA numbers, and so on. You can also choose specific sensitive information types individually here, like credit card numbers or routing numbers, SSN numbers, and so on. We provide more than 200 sensitive information type templates that you can choose from. Then you can monitor specific users or all the users. You can select data locations where you want to apply this policy. So example, you can choose Exchange, OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint sites. You can then choose the data transfer conditions as well here. So example, let's monitor personal data transfer between IT department and the rest of the departments or rest of the agencies. Then this is where you can delegate the risk mitigation to your end users or information workers. So you can show the policy tips and recommendations to your end users when personal data is found in the content. You can also send an email digest to your end users so that they can take certain appropriate actions. And you can also provide the end users with a contextual privacy training link as well. So these settings here will help you scale privacy risk management and delegate managing personal data to your end users. Now let's see privacy management experience for end users and how they are empowered to take certain decisions. So right now I am in Teams, and I can see that Bob from IT team is trying to send some personal information like SSN numbers to his colleague Sam, who is in another department. So since the admin has already set up a policy to prevent personal data transfer between departments, you can see that the transfer is being blocked over here. It's similar to the data loss prevention experience, but it works for data transfer within the organization or between the different departments. So now the information worker or Bob can learn more about why this message was blocked. So it's because it conflicts with a privacy policy. So this end user can now see a contextual privacy training link right here. If the user has to share this personal data with other department, they can also override this block after providing a business justification. If there is a match for data overexposure policy, the data owner receives an email digest like this, informing them of items that have open access or that are overshared. So right from Outlook, the data owner can take actions to make the content private, or they can keep the content as is. Users can also provide justification as to why they want to keep this personal or private information. In addition to the recommended remediation action, admins are also able to send customized training to data owners in the context of these potential risks, so that the end users receive contextual training and not a generic privacy overview training. So in long term, this type of contextual training approach will help employees retain their organization's privacy best practices, and thus it helps you build a privacy resilient workplace. Now let's say admins have created data minimization risk policies. So if there's a personal data sitting out here somewhere in your like SharePoint or OneDrive for Business, and it has not been modified in a long time, information workers are sent an email digest, something similar to this. And here the data owner or the information worker can trash that file with personal information if it's no longer required, or they can continue to keep it. Again, they can provide appropriate business justification if they want to continue keeping that personal information. Privacy management will be more efficient if it is handled by the end users who are the data owners, and they can quickly decide if they need to keep the personal information or not. This will unload your IT admins or privacy admins from handling all these transactional privacy risks. So that was a demo on how Priva privacy risk management can help you get insights of organizations' personal data, and how you can customize the policies, and how you can empower your users to make the right privacy handling decisions for their data. I will now hand over the session to Leo, who will talk about Priva subject rights request. Over to you, Leo.
Thank you so much, Bibi. Excellent presentation. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So as Bibi mentioned, and as we're seeing more and more, privacy regulations are giving individuals the right to make requests to either get a report about information that an organization might have on them, or to actually obtain that data that's being collected. And these requests, they're sometimes called data subject requests or data subject access requests. You may have heard them in terms like DSRs or DSARs. And these requests can come from customers, current employees, former employees, or even a prospective employee. And they're asking things like, or requesting things like, I want to know what data you have on me, or I need a copy of the data that you find because I have the right to be forgotten. Now, finding this kind of data can be a challenge, and not to mention very time consuming. Well, Microsoft Priva helps with these requests through the subject rights request solution. The solution provides a workflow that has automation and collaboration capabilities to help you search for these subjects' data, review those findings, and collect the appropriate files to produce reports, and then hand over the content that's been collected to the subject, who is grading in this case. Enough talking about this, let's get into the demo. Now, how you get to the subject rights access module for Priva is you have to go to the Microsoft Purview Compliance portal or browse to compliance.microsoft.com. You do need to be a member of the Subject Rights Request Administrators role group in order to access the solution. We'll just search for that. You need to be a member of this group. Once you have the correct permission, you can come down on the left navigation bar, scroll down to Priva Subject Rights Request. Open the solution, we see that the main page gives us an overview to help you understand the current status of any cases. You can see cases that are active, cases that are due soon, maybe some that are overdue, and even cases that have been closed. Here we see a circle graph that indicates status, and a chart over here for some top request types. Now, to better understand the elements of a case, let me just bring up a slide real quick. There are 4 easy steps. Number 1, you create the request. After the case is created, You can see an estimate of the data that has been collected, and you can review that data. You can also collaborate with others on the case. And finally, you can generate reports, fulfill that request by giving the subject either the report or the data that has been collected. Let's go back to the Purview compliance portal. And let's start with step one. Let's create a case for Grady Archie. So we click on create a request. We type in the subject's name, which is Grady Archie. Put in his email address. And then we have to add residency. Obviously, this is a request for the United States. So we'll select United States. And here we have choice on who this case is for. Customer, current employee. I'm going to put former employee. Coming over next, these are the locations of where you can search. And you can search across Exchange email, SharePoint Online, which is going to include OneDrive for business and Teams channels. I'm going to click on Exchange and choose Grady's mailbox. I'm going to leave the default for SharePoint to collect all data that may be related to Grady. Click Next. Here we can define the search. So you can refine things with the options on this page, including adding identifiers about the data subject, which may include content authored by the subject. And we can also include all versions of items in SharePoint. And if you suspect that the data volume is going to be big, you can also choose to get an estimate first before the content is automatically retrieved. I'm going to select all of these options. Here we can add some personal attributes about the subject, like nicknames, phone numbers, or address. Clicking on Next, we can select the conditions for this search, like the sender, we want the recipient, title or subject of an email, time frame. I'm going to choose time frame. And for this subject request, he's asking for anything that's been collected in the last 2 months. So I'm just going to go back to March, from March to May. We'll click Next. And here I can decide whether what type of request this is based on what the subject is asking for. An access request is going to provide a summary of the data subject's personal information that's being held. An export request provides a summary and a full report, but also the subject's personal information that the organization has. And a tag list for follow-up, this is going to generate a summary of any files that were tagged during the data review that might require additional actions that are outside of Priva. A good example of this is if, as an action, you need to delete any of the data subject's personal information. Right? We can also select whether or not this is related to a specific data privacy regulation. I've already chosen that this is related to the US Patriot Act. And then we can finally define a deadline for this access request. Let's click Next. Here we can confirm this request and then create the request. I'm going to cancel this because for the sake of this demo, I've actually already created this request for us in advance. So after you create the request, the solution is going to use your inputs to look for the matches in the locations that have been selected. And once that data has been compiled, you can then review those findings and make some choices about what you want to include or exclude from the report and the export. And if you need to redact any information if necessary. Now, this is the request that we just created. I'm going to open it. Let's take a moment to look at this progress chart here. So the data estimation stage takes about 60 minutes or so to complete. And once that estimation is complete, you can determine the results of your search, whether or not they're satisfactory, and then you can proceed to retrieving the data. And once that data is retrieved, we can see more information about the request, such as the total of number of items found and the locations where these are found, and also some priority items. So now that we're at the review data stage, let's move over to the data collected. Here we can do a built-in review by selecting any file on the page. We can also filter by location, review status, tags, or even the content owner. Let's filter by location. I want to review any items that were found and collected in SharePoint. In this area, we can actually start reviewing. We can click on a file. We can mark it as include. If we mark it as included, it's going to show up in the final report. Or it can be marked with, we can mark files with exclude, and they won't show up or not a match. We can also apply tags. Tags like built-in tags for follow-up, delete, or update, and there's also custom tags. Within an item, within content, you can do things like annotate. So this happens to be a file that has some sensitive information in it. So I can do an area redaction on those credit card numbers. I can also use a pencil to circle or point the next reviewer to something I want them to take a deeper look at. We can also look at the details of this item, such as the review status or the date that the item was modified. And even a reviewer can add notes to any of these items. All this and escalated for review. So this is just me coming in here as one reviewer, but actually you can add other collaborators to this request, this case. So once you add collaborators, they'll become a member of this case. And it also gives you the option to chat with collaborators. So each time a request case is created, it creates a Teams channel that users that are reviewers in this case can collaborate and talk to each other on this Teams channel in a secure way. And this is an example. This is the export request for Grady Archie, where users are going back and forth communicating. Going back to the request, we also have options for Power Automate to give you capabilities for managing and automating some of the aspects of the case. We do provide a few built-in templates that you can use, but you can certainly create your own based on your organization's needs. So now that we've gone through 3 of the stages, let's take a look at the final element of a case. Let's go over to the report section. Once all of the items have been reviewed and their statuses are set, it's time to create the final report and fulfill the request. And once we click complete review, the solution's going to create a report and collect all the files that we marked include during the review process. And these are the files that can be submitted to the data subject to complete the request. And once the review is complete, subsequently, we're going to see generate reports up here in the upper right corner. And if this is an export request, it can take about 30 minutes to generate the report and the zip file that contains all the files that are being requested by the subject. But let's move over to a request that I've created previously that's at the stage ready for export. So I can show you. We're going on to the reports tab. This is the report that can be the report and the export package that can be provided to the subject that's requesting his file. One thing to note, when you've performed all of the necessary actions to resolve the request, after you download these items, you then click close the request, and this is going to complete the request. And by the way, it's gonna produce a zip file that you can give to the data subject. So sometimes customers ask, well, how long is that report in the data retained? Well, that's a setting that's defined in the data retention period section, and this can be between 30 and 90 days that we hold that information so that it can be exported. Well, this completes the demo for Priva subject rights request. I'll now hand it back over to Bibi and Barry.
Thanks, Leo. All right, everybody, thanks again for joining. We're going to wrap up here with a couple of slides. This one here is some Priva specific resources. So we've been doing a series of these webinars. Today's topic, of course, is on Priva. So these resources are specific to Priva, the solution. So you see here some videos and some other documents. And as I mentioned, we do have a YouTube channel specific to compliance. And all of these webinars are posted, recordings are posted on that site. Before we leave this page really quickly, and you're going to see it again, we did create a email alias for Microsoft State and Local Government Compliance at Microsoft.com. So if you have any questions or requests or would like to meet, please just send it there and the appropriate person will respond and follow up with you. How do you get started with Microsoft 365 compliance? If you are a unified support customer, there are a number of workshops related to compliance and eventually with Priva, because as we mentioned, it is a fairly new product. There's also assessments available. And as I mentioned, if you have any questions at all, the simple thing to do would just be to reach out to us at msslgcompliance@microsoft.com. So what we'd like to do is open up the mute line and address any questions. So any questions at all, please feel free to ask them as we prepare to wrap up for the day.
Feel free to come off mute if you like. The microphone's open.
All right.